Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, thank you for joining us here. We are live every weekday starting at 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook, YouTube, our website, and of course our apps, where I highly recommend you download those. That's a great way to watch the show and everything else. But regardless, thanks for being here with us. Today, to start off, we are talking about texting scams, something that I'm sure everybody is used to at this point. I got one literally right before we were going on air. I got a texting scam. It wasn't for what we're talking about here, but this is one that a lot of people are getting, and that is texts saying you owe overdue toll fees. That is something that's random enough to where if you've ever gone through a toll, particularly, here in Oregon, we don't have a lot of those, but in Washington there are. I've gone through tolls before. I forgot to pay them, and then I did get a message saying I had an overdue toll fee. That one was legit. These ones might not be, and we're going to talk about that right now, about people receiving these. To do so, we have Rob Falzon, who's the head of engineering in Canada for Check Point. And Robert, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you being a part of the show and talking about this. And, to start off, I think, can you give us a little bit of the context here of these texting scams that people are receiving?
Sure. Yeah, there's actually a name for them, interestingly enough, and it's called smishing, right? So SMS phishing. For those who've not heard of it before, it's essentially just receiving a scammer texting you to your mobile phone and trying to get you to click on a link or to send them some money in some other way. Often, of course, it's something completely random, as you mentioned. In this case, it's tolls. But there's enough of them that, if the money doesn't look like it's a lot, people will typically try to click on those and see if they can't take care of it right away. Problem is that they're not real. And this is costing like tons and tons of money. People are being victimized by it on a regular basis, and it's becoming more and more of a challenge.
And smishing, so that's a term, in case anybody didn't know that. Now you know that term. I just learned that. So that's a good one to know. And then, looking at it from that standpoint of so many people receiving these, are they just sending out, kind of like what they do with emails, sending out hundreds or thousands of these and then just hoping one or two people will click on them?
That's it, right? So they're really trying to get as many people as possible. So in some cases, actually, there might even be more to the situation. For those, for example, we've seen in the news recently a whole lot of data breaches happening, various different companies and services. And sometimes those phone numbers are actually leaked in those data leaks as well. So it's not just usernames and passwords, it's personal information like phone numbers. And as a result of that, some of these text messages, smishing messages, can actually be very scary because they might include information about you or something that's specific to you that you might look at it and go, well, that's got to be legitimate. How did they know that? I better click on that link right away. So the fact is that they actually are using leaked data from other attacks and using it to further victimize people, which is really unfortunate.
So combining all of that together, if you see your name in there or your address or something personal linked to it, you would much more likely think that is real. One question just before we go into this specific scam, but I know, email is definitely really hard to regulate, but when it comes to texting and text scams, I know there has been some regulation passed or attempts to pass regulation. Is this an easier thing for at least federal authorities or telephone, companies to crack down on, or is it still just as hard to control as it ever was?
I think a lot can be done, but it is a challenging situation, even for telcos themselves. There's a couple of technologies, actually interesting, they're called stir and shaken, which are a couple of technologies that telcos have put in place to help them identify scam callers themselves. But you have to remember that a scammer could just as easily register a real number and begin using that and just try to go and get as many people victimized as possible in the period of time it takes for them to be reported, right? Many carriers do already offer services like I know in the US, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile has a service that most of their subscribers can sign up for, which will help them block a lot of those using the technology available to them. There's even third-party apps available like Truecaller or Haya, or I think there's one called RoboKiller, and those apps basically work to identify scam callers, and they rely on people themselves to submit a report when they see a scam call. So much can be done about it, but it's a very, very complicated and widespread issue. Legislation certainly will help, I think, more on the enforcement side of it. But as far as what we do about it immediately, I think things like this are important. We need to talk more about it and make sure that folks understand that this is something that's happening, first of all, and how common it really is, so that they can be on guard for it.
And that's I think all very good things to know. I mean, something with the tolling scam in particular. I mean, if you're here in Oregon, you don't go through a toll that often. So if you do receive a message like that, it may harken back to something that you actually did. Like myself, as I mentioned before, I went through a toll bridge in Tacoma and forgot to go through the toll section. And then, of course, they scanned my license plate and I got a nice fine in the mail for that. That was technically an overdue toll fee. And I just assumed that was legitimate. I paid it. Turns out it was. But how often that happens for people who did that and then didn't realize this wasn't real. So how do you go through and make sure that this is an actual legitimate thing that you're getting?
There's a few things I'd recommend. First of all, our mobile phones are really the key to our entire kingdom, right? So everything generally we have that is to be known about us can be discovered from our phone. If you gave me your phone for 10 minutes, I can tell you everything about you, right? The same for myself. So we really have to do a better job of protecting those. Make sure you have an app. We have one that is called Zone Alarm, which is for the mobile device that has antivirus, anti-malware, and basically will protect from links that you do get clicked on. But the best thing to do is to not click on them in the first place, right? So be aware that anything you receive in a text message, even if you think it might actually be legitimate, I would go in and go directly to the site itself. So open up another browser, maybe even on a computer somewhere else, open it up and go directly to the site that might be issuing that fine that you're concerned about, and check for yourself there. Because when somebody sends you something, it's really not something you can trust, right? And we've seen these tax season. This is very popular. You owe the government money and things like that. Go to the website. Make sure that you log in with your credentials in a machine that you trust, and then you can be sure that it is in fact legitimate. Whatever you do, don't respond to those text messages, especially if you believe they are scammers. I know some people like to mess around and play, mess around with the scammer. The problem is when you do that, the scammer on the other end actually now knows that there's a live person on the other end of that random number. So they'll go ahead then and tell the other scammers, hey, I have a list of real people here. Go ahead and continue scamming them. So it's best just not to respond and delete the message after you report it.
I know a lot of people who do that, who do the reply back and try to have fun with that. But so word of warning then, that most likely is an actual person who's replying to that, a scammer somewhere.
Yeah, it's likely a scammer, but as I said, you're probably setting yourself up for even more annoying phone calls and texts later on by responding.
So don't do it, as tempting as that may be.
Don't do it.
Okay, very good to know. I'm going to tell a few friends about that. But coming back to the toll side of things, and just these text messages, what can be done about these going forward? Is this something just that we can expect to be happening? Now they've latched on to tolls, and that's the big push right now. Will this be going on forever, or will they move on to something else after that?
I think when there's enough saturation, when people start to really become aware that this is probably a scam, here in Canada, we get phone calls on a daily basis for furnace and duct cleaning. It's just the most random things, right? It's every 10 minutes your phone could ring and somebody wants to clean your duct. So and now it's so saturated that everybody knows that this is a scam or it's a spammer of some kind. So the same will happen, I think, with the toll situation. They will eventually find something else to move on to that's more topical or interesting. During COVID, there were other things like, oh, get your vaccine early, jump the line. Maybe a movie premiere is coming out. Hey, get great new tickets before they become available. All of these things are ways to prey on people who are they're looking for an emotional response. They want you to do something without really thinking about it and click on that link. So that's where you really need to be aware that it doesn't really matter if it's toll or otherwise. Do not click on the link. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and that's good to know. I mean, I think preying on that emotional side, as you just mentioned, sometimes if you're really busy and just see overdue fee, what is this, and just don't think about it. That sounds like that's how they're getting a lot of people. So, going forward, you mentioned don't click on them. You can also get software for your phone to scan those out. Any other just general tips that you would have for anybody out there to make sure that they don't fall victim and to tell other people not to fall victim?
You can sign up for there's do not call registry. So if you're getting a lot of these things, even if they are legitimate, if they're marketing and things like that, you can sign up for a do not call registry, and that sometimes helps to reduce that. Most modern smartphones now also have a feature. If you go into the settings of your phone, you'll see something that allows you to block unknown callers. You can just simply turn that on right in the settings of your phone, and for the most part, you won't be receiving any more of those calls, because they'd have to literally spoof a call number that you have in your contacts list for that to happen. So that would be something I would recommend doing.
All right. Well, Robert, thank you very much for joining us to talk about this. Obviously, something to keep abreast of. We like to make sure that everybody's aware of what's going on when it comes to these scams, and people fall victim to it. And it's sometimes there may be certain demographics where you think maybe somebody older who's not used to being on their phone or it clicks on that. That's common misnomer, but it's not just that. It can happen to anybody.
Absolutely. That's a good point to make. Make sure that you talk to your children about it, and not just your children, but any elderly or senior people who are much more connected nowadays as well. Make sure that you share that knowledge with them so that they could be safe as well.
Well, Robert, thank you very much. Really appreciate you joining us here and to talk about this and to share that information. And yeah, thanks for keeping us knowledgeable about what's going on out there.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, and for everybody who's watching us live, this is Fox 12 Now, so thank you for being here with us. We are live here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and we have more coming up at 1:30 p.m. We're actually going to be talking about switching gears. We cover a wide range of topics here. We'll be talking about Bill Walton. Now, if you are a Trailblazers fan or have been in the Northwest for any amount of time, or an NBA fan, you know who Bill Walton was. Bill Walton tragically passed away of cancer here recently, just a couple of days ago. And so we're going to be talking about that and going through some memories of Bill with Casey Holdall from the Portland Trailblazers is going to join us, and our own Paul Strunk, who works here behind the scenes. He's going to be talking about his time working as an assistant for Bill Walton. And he's got some memorabilia here that's pretty amazing too that we'll be showcasing with that. So I invite everybody to join us there at 1:30. You can share your memories of Bill, but that's coming up here shortly. So we'll take a break right now. We'll reset for that. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.